And this is what happens when politics is being played out in some critical roles, or we have incompetent people sitting in some critical posts. And so it leaves room for people to sue the government, to sue fellow Jamaicans.
Be it resolved that the government immediately provide the funds necessary for Electoral Office of Jamaica to embark on a total re-verification of the voters in Jamaica.
Blessings, ABR family and viewers. Welcome back to the channel. It's your girl, Isabel Rose. And in this one, Government MP Everal Warmington proposes several changes to the ROPA Act as it relates to voting. And the Governor General continues to be under fire. Please to stay tuned for the details at hand. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Big up to all my ABR members. If you are interested, please to join the membership. Only a small fee per month to become a member of the movement. You get member star badges beside your name, member shout out, a whole lot of other perks as it relates to membership. Please come on board, support the channel, support the movement. Please and thanks. So ABR family and viewers, we seen what took place in the general election of September 3rd, 2025, where voting suppression, a lot of voters got frustrated, left the line. They had to be in line for some hours upon hours. We heard of several thousands of ballots being spoilt because quite a few persons still don't know how to mark a X and other issues. But then we see the opposition spoke out after and stated that there needs to be, a whole heap of changes to the whole voting process in our country. And he even made mention of, washing or scraping the voters list to relieve the list of persons who are deceased. And so in the House of Representatives a few days ago, a government MP of the Southwestern St. Catherine constituency, Everal Warmington, has proposed a whole lot of changes to the ROPA Act, which is basically calling for the scraping of the rule for voters to mark a X. Right? So he's proposing that them not necessarily have a mark a X. It can be any mark. And I want to know if you agree with that. He also proposed that the whole re-verification take place, that the government must give the Electoral Office of Jamaica the funds to do that. Because we can't have people who have deceased many, many years still on our voters list. It does not give a true count, and it does not give the true count of the voter turnout. He's also calling for an extra 1 hour on the allotted time for voting. But I'm going to let you hear what he stated in its entirety. I want to make me know if Enuh agree, yes or no.
Whereas Section 35, subsection 3 of the Representation of People Act states that the elector shall forthwith enter the enclosed area of the polling center, so provided, and there make a mark with a black lead pencil within the space containing the name of the candidate of his choice. And whereas there are other implements other than a black lead pencil that can also affect such mark for the candidate of one's choice, and whereas there are other marks other than a cross that an elector may make in a place containing the name of the candidate of one's choice, be it resolved that this Honourable House takes the necessary action to have the appropriate amendments done to Section 35, subsection 3 of the Representation of People Act to provide that any implement that an elector finds appropriate or convenient to use to make the required mark shall be lawful. And be it further resolved that further amendments be made to the said Section 35, subsection 3 of the Representation of People Act to make any mark on a ballot by an elector in the space containing the name of the candidate of his choice or the intent of the elector can be discerned shall be valid and not limited to a cross. Whereas Section 41A, subsection 1 of the Representation of People Act specifies that every candidate in an election may appoint such person as he thinks fit to be outdoor agent and shall issue to any such outdoor agent appointed by him a certificate of appointment in the prescribed form, specifying the polling station in respect of which the agent is appointed. And whereas in many cases, returning officers, election day workers, and auxiliary or one-day police and members of security forces have prevented these said agents from effectively carrying out the functions for which they were appointed. And whereas the reason given is that these agents cannot be on the compound where the polling is being conducted, and in other cases that agents must be hundreds of meters away from the polling station. And where subsection 77(1), subsection 1 of the Representative of People Act does not apply to outdoor agents, and where section 41A, subsection 3 of the Representation of People Act specifies the distance of the outdoor agent to be not less than 20 yards from polling station, and whereas no agent can carry out the function for which he or she is appointed, being such distant from where the poll is being conducted, be it resolved that section 41A, subsection 1 of Representative of People Act be amended to allow the person appointed by a candidate as his agent to be within the precincts of and closer than 20 yards to the polling station as now specified, so that agent will be able to carry out the duties for which that agent was appointed. Whereas subsection 33 of the Representation of People Act specify that the poll shall be taken in each polling station between the hours of 7 o'clock in the forenoon and 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And whereas there are changes to circumstances which have influenced the setting of the time for polling, and whereas we are now in an electronic age, be it resolved that section 33 of the Representation of People Act be amended, allowing the time for polling on election day to be between the hours of 7 in the forenoon and 6 in the afternoon. Where section 44(3) of the Representation of People Act states, if in the course of counting the votes, any ballot paper is found with the counterfoil still attached thereto, the presiding officer shall carefully conceal the number thereon from all persons present, and without examining them himself, remove and destroy such counterfoil. He shall not reject the ballot merely by reason of his former failure to remove the counterfoil. Be it resolved that this section be amended to add, or the counterfoil having been removed above or below the perforated line. Whereby a partial verification of voters list was done more than 15 years ago, and whereas the current voters list reflects a distorted number of actual electors in Jamaica, but instead an inflated number. And whereas the number given after an election as a voter turnout do not reflect the true percentage, be it resolved that the government immediately provide the funds necessary for Electoral Office of Jamaica to embark on a total re-verification of the voters in Jamaica.
Now, a silent Governor General has been in the media more than the ordinary since of lately, and one in which we learned that 3 vacant posts have been in the Integrity Commission since July. Recommendations were sent to the Governor General, and no appointment for those recommendations as of yet. It is very important if we want the Integrity Commission, the anti-corruption watchdog, to continue their work in the fight against corruption, to do their work effective. We want these posts to be filled. And so even though we learned with a message from the Governor General's office that he's not obliged to give any form of response to the Jamaican populace of his actions or inactions, I beg to differ, even though it's in the Constitution, because the taxpayers of our country pays the Governor General and we pay him very well. But separate and apart from that, we also seen a constitutional lawyer, Dr. Lloyd Barnett, saying that the appointments needs to be speedy. And he quotes, "The appointments to fill vacant posts for directors at the Integrity Commission should be done promptly, owing to the critical importance of their roles to the anti-corruption body." He says that every effort should be made to carry out the appointments ASAP. The Governor General has also been in the spotlight, been taken to the courts because what a press secretary deemed to be an unlawful dismissal. So a Sandra Sims, a former press secretary to the Governor General, Sir Patrick Allen, has filed a constitutional claim against the government of Jamaica alleging unlawful removal from office and is seeking full compensation for unpaid salaries and benefits dating back to January 2022. In the claim filed in the Supreme Court, Sims, who is represented by senior attorney Hugh Wildman, contends that she was never formally dismissed from her post and remains a public officer under Section 125 of the Constitution of Jamaica, which governs the appointment and removal of public servants. The Attorney General is named as the defendant in the matter. Now, you realize if this lady wins this case, how much money we, the taxpayers, going to have to fork up to pay this lady from 2022 until now. Take into consideration vacation leave and all of that. Why was this lady relieved of her duty in the first place? Too much bangarang and too much, corruption taking place in our country. And this is what happens when politics is being played out in some critical roles, or we have incompetent people sitting in some critical posts. And so it leaves room for people to sue the government, to sue fellow Jamaicans, and to get millions from the tax coffers. ABR family and viewers, this is where I come to closing of this video. What says you in the comment section about everything that was outlined? Do you agree with Everald Warmington for an extended 1 hour on the voting time from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m.? Do you agree that it doesn't necessarily have to be an X being marked at whosoever candidate they want to support, whatever line is there, as long as it's within the box and can be identified towards the candidate? What says you? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel on the road to 50k. Help me to get there, please and thanks, by liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. Get this video to at least 8,000 likes. Do stay tuned for more videos. Stay tuned for more updates. Big up on yourself. Happy Friday.